Today, I'm going to talk about how to shift the focus of an activity to make it both fun and educational. Welcome to Sarah Still Teaches, a place where we get real about the education of our children. If you're looking for more regular educational content, be sure to hit subscribe. We've been to our local zoo countless times since we moved to Colorado. Leland was about 3 when we moved here, and we started frequenting the zoo because it had so much to offer. We were always entertained, we loved to watch the animals, and participate in some of the encounters that they offered. But typically we were visiting the zoo with the purpose of being entertained. When I started homeschooling, I knew I wanted to still go to the zoo, but how could I make it educational? This was when I started to shift the lens that we were looking at the zoo through. When we would go to the zoo, once we started homeschooling, we would go with an educational purpose. And it totally changed the experience that we had at the zoo. We were in the middle of a science unit about animal adaptations when we were given the opportunity to have an encounter with Chewy the tiger at the zoo. And so before our trip, I knew I wanted to reinforce those specific concepts. So I talked to Leland about making sure that while we were there, we talked to the keepers about the animals and their adaptations that help them survive in the wild. Once we were at the zoo, we were taken to Chewy's enclosure where 2 keepers met us for our feeding experience. They started to tell us facts about Chewy and how our experience was going to go, and then Leland got the opportunity to ask them some questions. So he, of course, asked those adaptation questions that I had talked to him about beforehand, and we were told lots of information about Chewy and how he has adapted to survive his habitat. One of the examples being his fur helps him blend in with his natural surroundings while also helping keep him warm. The keepers also explained to us there's a dwindling population of Amur tigers and how important conservation is for this species. After we were done feeding Chewy, we moved on to visit with the giraffes. The Cheyenne Mountain Zoo has an enormous herd of giraffes, and so you're able to feed them on a daily basis. Growing up around the zoo, Leland is the most comfortable feeding them, and I would say around age 3, the twins started to warm up to feeding the giraffes, but they can be a little intimidating. They're tall, they have these long tongues, and they want the lettuce that you're holding in your hand. So they will come over to the fence and stick their heads over and surprise you every now and then. So the kids love feeding the giraffes, but it's always an experience. Today, while we were there, we talked to our host for our encounter and learned that not only are the giraffes tall so that they can reach high up into the branches where other animals cannot for food, but they also have long tongues to help them not scratch their face or their eyes as they're getting food off of these tall branches. Their eyesight is another adaptation. They have very good eyesight and can see far away so that they know when predators are coming. As we wandered the zoo, we continued to discuss the physical and behavioral adaptations that help the animals survive. If we couldn't find a keeper or information on a sign, we would look it up on our phone. Did you know hippos have a pinkish color to them because they release an oil to help protect them from the sun? Getting in the water is also a behavioral adaptation to help them survive. It hydrates them and helps them to keep cool. While we were there, we learned that the penguins were molting, which explains why they looked a little rough that day. But the keeper informed us that they molt, which takes a few weeks and sometimes can leave them looking a little rough and a little grumpy, but the process is necessary so that they get new feathers and maintain their waterproof coats. Visiting the zoo doesn't have to reinforce science concepts only. After we came home from our encounter with Chewy, Leland wrote a thank you note to the zoo, thanking them for answering our questions and the opportunity to have an encounter with an animal of our choice. So we worked on writing, and how do you write a thank you note? How do you address an envelope and put it in the mail so that it gets where it needs to go? This is a skill that he needs to know, and it also reinforces writing concepts, capitalization, add marks, and closings. During another trip, we decided to focus on money. We had been working on adding and subtracting money and also calculating how much change we should get back when we pay for something in math. During this trip, I let Leland be in charge of our money for the day. He started off by buying some lettuce to feed giraffes. After we fed the giraffes, we made it just in time to feed the elephant. So we waited in line, as this isn't something that we typically are there for at the exact moment that they do the elephant feedings. So we looked at the options. There are a couple of options when you feed the elephants about how many pieces of food you want to purchase, and I let Leland decide what was the most cost effective. So he decided to get 3 items so that if the twins wanted to feed the elephants, they could as well, and it was also the most cost effective. So he paid $20 and got $5 back in change, as the experience was $15. Spoiler alert, the twins couldn't handle feeding the elephant. Ava really wanted to, but as the elephant got close, she just couldn't do it. So Leland ended up getting to feed the elephant all 3 pieces, but it was more about the money than the experience that day. As we got to the carousel, our cash was running a little low, so I had Leland check to see if we had enough to spend $2 per rider to get on the carousel. Sure enough, we did. Deep down inside, I was going, oh, we have enough. I don't really want to ride the carousel and navigate 3 children by myself. But we made a plan before we got on the carousel, and Ava and Paxton did a great job compromising. Ava decided she wanted to ride on the bench, and Paxton decided he would ride on the horse this time, and next time they'd flip. So I helped Paxton ride the horse, and Ava sat on the bench while Leland rode on his own. After a dizzying ride, I could tell Leland was eyeballing the cotton candy at the sweets cart. And so we talked about how much money we had left, and I also had him do some quick addition to find out how much money had we already spent for the day. And that day we had spent $26. Typically when we go to the zoo, we don't do every activity because we frequent the zoo a lot. And so we are members because we frequent the zoo so much, but we don't always do every activity as a way to save some money. And so once he realized we spent $26, which is more than we typically do, he decided he didn't have to have the cotton candy, and I could appreciate that. So I'm starting to see a connection with him in understanding the value of $1. And so not only are we learning about money in math, we're reinforcing it in the real world. Your local zoo is a great place to get out of the house and still do some learning. Our zoo also has homeschool programs once a month for all different ages, where they get to experience interactions with an animal and learn about a specific topic during the program. Leland just completed his first one last week, and he had a really great time and nothing but good things to say about it. So check out your local zoo and see if they have homeschool opportunities as well. I hope you found today's video useful in thinking about how you can shift the lens that you look at an activity through to make it reinforce what you're learning at home.